Good afternoon, everyone. We're calling today's first finance agenda to order. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd at 2 p.m. We're in conference room 308. This is an agenda for decision-making only on resolutions. We have a handful of resolutions that we'll be considering. We will be passing most of them out as is, except for one, and I'll kind of go through them quickly so you'll know which one. So HCR 122, HR 102, that will be as is. HCR 125 HD1, HR 106 HD1, that's as is. HCR 133 HD1, HR 114 HD1, that's as is. HCR 134 and HR 115, this is with amendments. It'll be an HD1. We're going to be adding in language to the resolution to specify suggested grants, federal grants that can be options for HAIMA to apply for. That's the only one that will have amendments. Next is HCR 166 HD1, HR 145 HD1 as is. And the last resolution, HCR 172, that's also as is. So we're going to be taking all of these measures up in one vote as we did yesterday. Are there any comments or concerns with any of the resolutions that I mentioned? Okay, seeing none, Chair, can you take the vote,
Okay,
please?
members, we're going to be voting on HCR 122, HCR 122 and HR 102 through, on page 2, HCR 172. Is that correct? I'm sorry. HCR 122 and HR 102 together through HCR 172 in one concurrent vote. Are there any reservations? Oh, you know what, I'll call it out. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representatives, Ayu? Aye. Chun? Cochran?
Aye.
Garrett?
Aye.
Kaaloa?
Aye.
Kila? Kobayashi?
Aye.
Lamasao? Morikawa?
Aye.
Nishimoto? Poipoi? Lauchi? Elkos?
David.
Elkos?
Aye.
Okay, and Ward?
Omnibus aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Your recommendation is adopted. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. All of those have passed. We are now adjourned with the first agenda.
Okay, we're going to reconvene the Committee on Finance to take up our second agenda. First up is Senate Bill 3091 ST2 HD1 relating to making an emergency appropriation to the Department of Education for food service. First up is Department of Education. Thank you. Okay, next we have the Hawaii Food Industry Association. Not present. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, questions, members? Okay, Representative Ayu.
I just have a quick question for the Department of Education. I just want to know, I guess, how do you go $20 million in a deficit for food service? Isn't there like checks along the way, or is this a projection? Is this a projection of?
That was our projection, based on the cost of food and depending on the federal reimbursement, and there's a number of things, but there was a calculation, a guesstimate calculation.
So I guess my second question is, if we don't fund this, how do you do food service this year or the next 2 years? Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Representative Ward?
Chair, could I follow up with it? Is this accounts payable, or you're just estimating that, hey, you're $20 million in
We're
debt
going
for
to
food?
be 20 million short.
So you do have the accounts payable from various vendors?
No, I mean, that we're going to be short, even with the federal reimbursements.
And it's $20 million and you didn't know it was coming?
We knew it was coming.
Or you knew it was coming? Is this anything to do with the big hubs that you're going to have bigger than Walmart's?
No.
Nothing to do with that one?
No.
Because that's going to cost a lot of money, too. When is that hub going to be up and running? The giant kitchens that you guys are going to have?
It's in the planning stage right now as we speak, yes.
So you'll need a lot more money for that one, too.
We were hoping for separate line appropriations for that, sir.
You know, you guys get the most money of anybody, right? So when you say you're short, or you're in deficit 20 million, it's like what is your budget now? 2 billion, something?
Budget, but this amount is just for the food services, sir. Yeah.
When you're a $2 billion, you're not a mom and popper, you gotta have very quick, efficient accounting system.
Have many mouths to feed, sir.
Especially now that we feed lunch and
Yes, lunch and
breakfast.
breakfast, yes.
Thank you for all you do. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Ayu?
What is the plan to bring the cost within the amount of money you guys have? So that you're just not wildly spending money and then coming to the legislature because you know, asking us to make it work instead of you making it work within your budget?
I think part of it is to the requirements that we have to try to meet federal standards. You know, we're trying to go to food to farmer now, and there's a lot of things in the air that is in works, but there's a lot of criteria that we have to meet and we cannot get away from.
Okay, so you're saying the 20 million is expressly required by the federal government, and that's why we're short that much money? If we didn't have to follow those guidelines, we would be okay?
No, not necessarily, but that's just one of the criteria items that we have to work with.
Okay, so how much of the 20 million then is because of federal?
I don't know, sir. I have to
Okay.
get back to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3092, HD1, relating to emergency appropriation for the Department of Education for charter schools. First up is Department of Education. Okay, thank you. Next is the Hawaii State Teachers Association. Please, sir.
Aloha, Laverne Moore speaking on behalf of Osa Tui, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. The Hawaii State Teachers Association supports this bill and stands on its testimony, and I want to make a statement. Our public charter schools are meeting the needs and challenges that our schools are not addressing for those students who attend public charter schools. The public charter schools curriculum is another alternative that keeps our students out of the pathways of becoming a school dropout. Without attaining a high school diploma, one faces many barriers in life. Our public charter schools are a critical means of assisting our students in becoming economically self-sufficient. Please support this bill. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members, questions? Okay, this is a similar bill to the first one, so it's just a subsidy.
Chair,
Yes,
Q&A.
please.
Ms. Laverne Moore, one of the new teachers. Are you still the longest-serving teacher in the state of Hawaii?
Well, I know I am at McKinley High School.
Okay, thank you for your service. Do you know the growth factors in the public schools and the growth factors in the charter schools?
According to our research, every year our charter schools are growing 4% more in population, but they are not getting their fair share of funding.
Okay, my question is on that statistic. How is it they're growing in the public schools, which everybody kind of gravitates towards? Why are they gravitating towards the charter schools?
Because, to be frank, and this is my opinion.
Please be frank.
The curriculum, many of our, not many, but there are our students who are not able, they learn differently. And the communities that set up the charter schools are meeting the needs within that community for their students. And I've been trying at McKinley to create my own, not my own, but to create another curriculum so my students don't have to drop out, that they can still work at night, help their parents pay for rent and pay for food, and still get their high school diplomas. So that would be more of a workplace readiness type of program where we can assist our low-income families and students to still get their high school diplomas and be able to support the parents.
That was very diplomatic, if I understand what you're saying. Or between the
know, when you
lines, I
see me
think
coming, they
I
run
hear what
away.
you're saying between the lines. But it's good, because the more they get, hopefully the more money they get, and the better they will
Right,
become.
that's true.
Because right
So
now,
this-
there's quasi-second class.
These charter schools have a great means, and it serves the public. We should support them.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Laverne. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2727 HD2, SD2 HD1, relating to condominiums. First up is Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. Okay, thank you. Next up is Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Not here. Okay, next up is Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. Okay, thank you. Next is Hawaii State Energy Office. Not present. Okay, next we have Sea Peace Alliance.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Nicholas Zuba with CPACE Alliance. We're a nonprofit trade association that basically advocates for the best practices in the implementation and development of different CPACE programs all across the country, and testifying in strong support of the passage of this bill. And I do stand on my written testimony as I've submitted previously, and be available for any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next is Petro Pace Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Michael Yaki, Senior Vice President of Petros Pace Finance. In strong support of the legislation, we stand on our testimony.
Okay, thank you. Next is Nalu Homeowners Association. Oh, I'm sorry, missing one. Hawaii Bankers Association.
Good afternoon, Chair, and members of the committee. Mihoko Ito on behalf of the Hawaii Bankers Association. We do support the intent of this bill, but we would just note that the stakeholders met on this measure to hammer out compromise language, and that's reflected in House Bill 2801, SD1 version. So that's the language we would ask the committee to adopt. From the bankers' perspective, our concern was just really making sure that this program is limited to condominium associations and not the individual units themselves. And we believe that the SD1 version of the bill takes care of making sure that the language is tight on that point. So we'd ask for your consideration of that draft. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next is Holomua Collaborative. Okay, thank you. Hawaii Realtors. Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Okay, questions, members?
Greg Misakian.
I'm sorry?
Hello, this is Greg Misakian via Zoom.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I had previously spoken on this measure with concerns. I am a director of my condo association. I also serve as subdistrict to Vice Chair of the Waikiki Neighborhood Board, and I am the first Vice President of Kukua Council, an elder advocacy organization. And I had shared previously concerns that these types of loans, at least what I've researched, and again, I asked for due diligence and research, what I have researched is that they can be problematic and can cause problems, more problems sometimes than they're worth. And I was concerned about the high interest rates and the length of the loan and the possible adverse reactions or actions that could happen with the condo associations. So I would just stress that again. I put it in my testimony. I know there was a difference of opinion on whether they were private home loans or condominium loans, but I think in general, the CPACE loans have a concern, and I've expressed that before. So I appreciate that you address that when you make your decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, questions again, members. Representative Board.
But the Bankers Association, please. Is this not an outgrowth of the Marco Polo condominium fire and the ability to finance sprinklers, basically? Is that what this is all about? The way it's worded doesn't seem very street language clear to me. Is that what it's about?
Well, I think it's that among other things, this is like provides a new financing mechanism for condominiums to be able to carry out projects. Really, the Green Infrastructure Authority is the entity that would determine what types of things the loan could be used for.
So it's not primarily sprinklers. It could be solar if you're talking about the green.
It could be, other things.
It could be the solar.
That's my
What are the
understanding.
interest rates that the earlier testifier was talking about? What are the interest rates we're talking about? That would be a
I
problem or not?
probably would not be the person to ask about that. You'd
With
probably
the
want to
Bankers
ask one of the.
Association, aren't you?
Yes, correct. But we wouldn't be well, for the CPACE
Yeah.
loans, right? I think some of the folks
Who would
that
know
are-
that better?
Some of the CPACE folks that testified earlier, they would probably understand better the mechanisms of these specific loans.
Jared, can we talk to the CPACE people?
I think they're on Zoom.
Are they on the,
Yeah, they're on Zoom.
Greg, are you a C-Space?
No. No.
No, I think Michael Yaki, he's on.
Michael, are you there? Michael,
I,
are you there?
I am, sir. Thank you
Uh,
very much. Michael Yaki with Petros Pace Finance. These are, C-PACE financing is very unique because it mimics a lot the way that public finance works. We're able, because of the security of the lien, we're able to offer lower fixed interest over a long period of time, like 25 to 30 years. So it can be anywhere right now. We're averaging in the sevens, low eights, but when interest rates are low, we're in the 3s, 4s, and 5s. But the key to how CPACE works is that we're able to, because of the security of the lien, we're able to offer this financing over that longer period of time. And what that means is that the average payment that a property owner or a condominium association in this case would have to make is a lot less than conventional financing out on the market right now. But unless we have the authority, in last year, 2 years ago, actually, we got the authority to do this across the in Hawaii. We were working with HGIA on the program guidelines when the need for this legislation came about, and to ensure that we could include condominium structures and condominium associations in there. So it is, it's lower interest over a longer period of time.
Okay, the question is, if we pass the bill, what would the interest rate be when it takes effect in the next months?
It would depend, with the permission of the chair, it would depend on what we generally tend to be tied to is the 10-year treasury. We're about anywhere between 325 or possibly less, depending on what the interest rates are, above the 10-year treasury. So in 2022 or early 2023, we're in the low 5s. In nowadays, because of the way interest rates are, they're in the high 7s. If the Fed goes through with interest rate cuts, as they're projected to this summer, that will be lower. And again, the key to how CPACE financing works is because we're secured on the property, we're able to offer that lower interest rate over a very longer period of time, which means that the cash flow impact to a condominium association or to any property owner is a lot less. It's like taking a 30-year mortgage out on your house versus a 10-year mortgage. It's a question of what you believe you can afford to pay over that period of time. CPACE financing offers you the option of going much longer, so you have lower yearly payments to make.
But sir, 7% over 30 years doesn't sound like a deal, even if it's lesser than that. But let's say when we go to the normal mortgage market, can they refinance when the rates go down, or you get stuck?
Absolutely. And we have the last year's legislation allows for that, and we do that. We do and expect that all the time. We expect that anything that we've done in the last year and a half will be refinanced when interest rates go down, just as I think anyone who got a bank loan for a home, when interest rates go down, is going to be looking to refinance as well. So it's not something that you're tied to. It is something, though, that is it is a financing convenience when you're looking at what you can afford in terms of your yearly or monthly payment. And we have plenty of instances, and we expect that when interest rates go down, that it will be refinanced at a lower interest rate, whether by us or by a bank or some other kind of financing.
Okay, last question. Of all the condominium associations who have heard about this, what percentage have got buy-in and are excited that this bill should pass?
Well, I don't know. There are a lot of condominium associations on Hawaii. My sister, who's a real estate lawyer in Hawaii, did a lot of work on those over her lifetime. But I would just simply say we have met with a number of condominium associations. A lot of them understand, and what they say to us is that the fact that right now conventional financing is much shorter term, and it may be slightly lower in interest rate, but is much shorter in term, which means that the yearly payment that the association has to make is much higher. So they are looking for ways to make it much more affordable for the condominium association, and by assessment to the owners, to make it a lot easier for them to deal with. So hopefully we can get things started with this legislation. And again, as interest rates start to fall, we fully expect to either refinance or be refinanced out in favor of lower financing. But it is really, in terms of just the average monthly hit on an association, and by derivation to a condominium owner, a much more affordable for the moment way of addressing critical infrastructure needs within some of these buildings.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Further questions, members? Representative Ayu.
Maybe for DCCA first, and then back to, sorry, I can't remember his name.
Space or whatever.
Mike, but DCCA first. And my question is, can condominium associations go out now and take out just regular mortgages or commercial loans to fund infrastructure projects like this?
Well, I didn't look into specifically what condominium associations currently for kind of financing this.
I'm just talking about in general, can they go out and, can they go to Bank of Hawaii and get a,
Well, I'm sure the Bankers Association is here and
okay.
they can address.
Okay, yeah, sure, Mihoko. Not sure why DCCA doesn't know.
So thanks for the question. Yeah, currently, condominium associations can go to banks to get loans, and they do.
Okay, so this would just be at a lower rate because it's attached to,
This is a different type of loan that gets attached to,
Okay.
right, and gets a lien priority.
okay, and then I guess my question back to Mike, sorry, or maybe this is for both of you. I think a lot of people who live in condos are, already on fixed incomes. What is the difference between either the current status quo or, this new, lower interest rate loan versus just increasing maintenance fees by 3% every year? What is the difference as far as someone who's on a fixed income and can't necessarily afford, a one-time big special assessment or even smaller monthly, additional monthly payments?
Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. I think the issue that you're talking about is one that's critical, and I think important to understand. We're not going to be the end all be all of whether or not financing is available for condominiums. But what we do offer is an option, and that option is this. One of the features of how CPACE works is that it does not accelerate. On a bank loan, for example, for the most part, and I won't speak for all banks, but the way, when you miss a payment on your mortgage, for example, you run the risk of the entire mortgage becoming due if you don't make your payments. The way CPACE works is because we are tied to the property and not to the person, there is no acceleration. Only that year's, if you're delinquent, you only have to make up that year's payment in order to protect the title to your home, which gives a lot more options for you to figure out how to deal with it. So especially if you're lower income, if you missed one payment, but you can make it up a little bit later, you don't have to worry about the possibility that the entire amount becomes due. So for a condominium association, for example, because this doesn't go to condominium units, it goes to the association would only have to make up, for example, 1 year's payment, which they could try and do in a number of different ways, but it doesn't, the entire, say, if you were to provide, say, $5 million to a building, to a condominium association to fix the sprinkler systems and put solar on their roof or something like that, and say that you did it over 25, 30 years, the annual payment may be, $25,000 for the association. If you miss that, there may be some interest and some penalties, but it's only still $25,000 plus interest and penalties. It does not become the entire 5 million that becomes due all at once. So there's a little bit of a safety measure to this for a lot of condominium associations and for commercial property owners as well, because any number of different entities could step in and protect it and put it on their own other mortgage or what have you in order to ensure that things continue. But it does not accelerate, which is one of the features about CPACE that makes it very attractive as a means of financing, because it runs with the property, not with the association or the individual.
Okay,
And-
sorry, but as far as a missed payment is concerned, are you talking about a missed payment for the association or a missed payment for the
Yes.
individual apartment owner?
For the association, this
But
does not.
Isn't the missed
this is
payment,
not writ-
isn't
this is not
really,
for a
isn't
unit.
the
This is for
association
the
gonna just
association.
charge, isn't the association gonna just charge each individual unit owner the,
Yeah,
the
that-
pro rata share of their ownership in the?
We presume that they will. We
Okay.
presume
So-
that they will in order to make the annual payments. They will put it in their annual assessment that they would have
And then the
for common
association,
charges.
then the association's gonna have the ability to foreclose or default a unit owner and foreclose on them for failure to make these payments. Not saying that they can't already do that if they go out and get commercial paper, but this is another option. I'm just trying to figure out what
Yeah.
the effective difference is between going out and getting commercial paper versus just charging more in maintenance fees every year.
Again, but that is true. But again, that the risk of default is a little bit different.
Right,
If
okay.
you were to, on most commercial paper, when you enter into a default, the entire amount becomes due.
Okay,
Here, it's only
I got
that
it.
year, that delinquent payment becomes due. So the number of options that you have at your disposal to ensure that there is
I
no
got it,
foreclosure is a
Thank
lot,
you.
is a
Thank
lot
you, thank
different
you.
And
than.
Representative, if I could just add
entire
that,
amount
really
became-
for either type of loan, the assessment is the mechanism, right, to recover. So I just want to be clear about that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Chair.
Thank you. Okay, if it was up to
Thank
me,
you.
I get rid of Zoom because it just doesn't work as far as. Okay, I have a question for Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. In your testimony, you have some suggested amendments. Okay, this is agreed upon by all parties at this point in time? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, so we couldn't take all of the amendments in 2801 just because the title is wrong.
Right.
So I took out what we could, that would be constitutional, and put it into this.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you very much. Okay, further question, Representative Ward.
Could I ask Mike on the Zoom again, another question?
Sure.
Mike, I've looked through the bill to see who CPACER is. Could you give us, are you guys a private company, nonprofit? Are you government, or, and what's your customer base and experience, et cetera?
Well, first of all, my colleague Nicholas Zuba represents the CPACE Alliance. He testified earlier. That is the trade group for all CPACE companies that do it. It is made up of individual companies that specialize in this type of financing. My company called Petrospace Finance does this kind of finance. We're actually the largest originator of CPACE financing across the country. We've done projects as large as $150 million in some states. We did the largest project in New York City. We're all individual financiers. This is a very specialty niche thing. We don't run like thousands upon thousands of these things a year. We're not built like a bank because we are much more, because we act much more in some ways like a bond. It's a much different kind of market that we operate in. I would say that we've done $7.2 billion. Most of that has been done in the last 3 years as we've expanded, but that's spread out among 32 other states. Whereas a local branch of a large bank could do $1 billion a year. So it's a different kind of thing. It's specialty. It is aimed at providing a form of financing that is difficult to get on the normal commercial market. And the key to it is why you were in your wisdom passed this legislation in 2022 because it creates a structure for this kind of super security that allows us to provide essentially, non fully amortizing, non-APR, fixed rate financing over a long period of time. And we fully expect
Hold on, so I'm
that.
still trying to
Sure.
find out who you are. You're not a bank. Are you venture capitalists or are you just
No.
a financial
We're
association?
we're essentially a finance lending company. There are plenty of those around in this country, but we are not a bank. We're not built like a bank. We're not regulated like a bank.
Where are you
We are
incorporated?
go ahead.
Where are you incorporated?
We are incorporated in, my company's incorporated in Texas. Any number of the other companies may be Delaware or other kind of corporations. We are financiers. We're out there doing this, offering financing. We take these individual projects that we do, and what we do is that because they are almost, but not quite, like a bond, we sell our interest in it to other companies that are looking for longer term investments, insurance companies, pension funds, whatever, because of the security that the super priority lien that's in the legislation provides.
Federally or state licensed?
We are not actually licensed by the federal or state. We are regulated by the statutes that create us in each of the states in which we operate, all 33 of them.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on, members. Move on to Senate Bill 1035 SD2 HD1 relating to the general excise tax. First up is State Health Planning and Development Agency.
Aloha, Chair Yamashita, honorable members of finance. I am Jack Lewin, MD, the administrator of SHPTA and senior advisor to the governor on healthcare. Thank you for hearing this bill. We strongly support exempting the general excise tax from physician, dentist, nurse practitioner, and other clinician practices in the community. It's an undue burden on them and reduces their bottom line by over 4%. Hawaii's one of only 2 states that actually taxes clinicians in the community for this purpose. In Hawaii, we have about 3,000, I'm just going to tell you the physician community, we're probably 3,000 nurses short, about 1,000 physicians short. And the physician community here, about 60% are independent doctors in the community. Many work for Queens or Hawaii Pacific Health or for Kaiser Permanente, and they're nonprofit institutions. They're not subject to the excise tax. So it's the individual doctors who are the small business people out there who are the ones who are hurt by this. And while it doesn't seem like it's a huge amount of money, and in general, Hawaii has an excellent healthcare system, but we suffer from low reimbursement. In Medicare, our benchmark for Medicare is a third lower than the rest of the country. It's an average of 12,000 per beneficiaries in Medicare across the country, 9,000 here. So we're like $1 billion short in Medicare, and other areas where we're not getting our fair share. Unfortunately, this kind of affects the practitioners out there because the Medicare reimbursements are very low. We're fortunate that the MedQuest program has now raised its reimbursements up to be parity with Medicare, and it's quite an accomplishment, but it's still significantly lower than commercial reimbursement. So what happens is many physicians across the country don't participate in Medicaid and Medicare because it doesn't add up to sufficient business success in their practices. They limit their patient population. Doctors here do, but unfortunately, our physician shortage is serious. So I just want to say that I think one more point that we don't tend to think about. When physician shortage occurs, and this is true for dentists and for nurse practitioners and PAs and others, patients end up going to the emergency room and they end up going to the hospital on avoidable inpatient admissions. You know, we pay 40% of the Medicaid costs for these patients in that practice. So this bill would exempt doctors from Medicaid, Medicare, and TRICARE. But that 40% match it more than makes up for whatever the general excise tax issue is for us by virtue of sending patients to those more expensive sites of care. So please consider making this change in Hawaii, and I think it will really benefit us in terms of improving access. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Next is Department of Taxation.
Good afternoon, Kristen Sakamoto, Deputy Director of Taxation. We submitted written comments, but I just wanted to supplement with our revenue impact for this measure. So for fiscal year 25, we are estimating a loss of $31.6 million. For 26, $74.1 million. For 27, $77.5 million. 28, $81 million. In 29, $84.5 million, and for fiscal year 30, $88.2 million. I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up is Hawaii Association of Health Plans. Not here.
No.
Okay, next is Oahu Pediatric Dentistry. Not here. Next is Tax Foundation.
Good afternoon. This is Jane McMillan on behalf of the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We have submitted some written comments on the measure. In summary, the foundation does believe that there is evidence supporting an industry-specific GET exemption here, which would be appropriate to correct the unfairness of its application to private doctors and clinics as opposed to nonprofit hospitals and clinics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Hawaii Provider Shortage Crisis Task Force. On Zoom.
Hi, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing this bill. I think there's very strong medical and ethical arguments for a GET exemption for healthcare to the extent that in the last half decade, no senator or representative has voted against these bills trying to promote GET reform. In the 2023 session, the Department of Taxation said they could implement SB 1035 in January of this year. So this is something that clearly is there's a need for. Hawaii in the past, we've actually seen cases where major industries in our state have simply failed or collapsed. We saw that with pineapple. We saw that with sugarcane. Right now in Hawaii, I mean, my feeling, I feel like it's 1996 again, and we're watching the last sugar mill close on the Big Island. We're losing so many providers and so many practices. It's almost impossible to retain and recruit. And if we lose the primary care and the specialists in private practice, there simply shortly will be no one left to tax because those remaining providers will move over to the hospitals, hopefully, and stay in the state, but they'll be tax exempt there, but many will also retire and quit. The good news is, though, that if we're able to recruit the 575 missing physicians using a national analysis by the American Medical Association, that those additional physicians could generate $2.4 billion a year in aggregate economic input, be able to provide 13,000 well-paying additional jobs in our state, help generate $1 billion in wages and income, and annually produce another $95 million in state and local taxes. So although those revenues might be lost, they're going to be gone anyway once private practice goes away. If we can preserve private practice, by our calculations, there should be an increase in the amount of tax revenue coming in. And that doesn't even include the nearly 4,000 non-physician healthcare providers that AHEC, feels that we need. So I think this is a win for the patients. I think it's a win for the state revenue collections. And I would really humbly ask you to consider this bill to pass it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is, Kelly Withy.
Aloha, Chair Yamashita and all the committee members. My name is Kelly Withy, and I am the Physician Workforce Researcher in Hawaii. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for introducing this, hearing this bill today, because I think this is the number one thing that you, the legislature in Hawaii, can do to save the workforce in Hawaii in healthcare. We are losing practices, doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, PAs, dentists, every day. And you heard how the reimbursements are low. But this bill will take away that 5% extra they have to pay out of the Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE patients that they see. But, and with respect to Department of Taxation, I think it's only going to cost the state about $5 million in tax revenue on the GET, but it will bring in, like Scott Grosskreutz mentioned, probably $25 million in the first year on income tax, because we're losing our doctors. If we gain more doctors, and with the governor's loan repayment plan, more doctors are wanting to come here. If they come here, they set up practice, they hire 3-4 people, that tax base is much stronger than the small GET on what they do for patients. So if you want to look at the tax of the state, we want to strengthen this industry. We want to make this the true health state where people want to practice. So thank you for hearing it.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is Don San.
Dr. Withy, Chair Yamashita, and distinguished members of this FIN committee. Nice to see you all. I'm Dr. Sand. I'm a dentist who's, I stand in support of my written testimony to support this bill, and I stand in support of Dr. Withy, Dr. Lewin. These economic analysis hold true. We would be just saving a few pennies and losing a lot. But today I'm here just to highlight the voice of the underserved, because the trickle down of this type of bill unduly is affecting the dentists and physicians that are choosing to help the Medicaid and the underserved. So I want to thank you, Chair Yamashita, for when you're going through all the priorities to balance the budget, that you're realizing all of our health is the number one priority in the health of our constituents. And I want to thank all of you on this committee that also serve on the health chairs that are helping to look at policy that's giving respect to oral health and reconnecting it back to whole body health. Because truly, if we don't have our oral health, we can't enjoy true health. Mahalo.
Thank you. Okay, next is Esther Smith on Zoom.
There we go. Hello, thank you, Chairman Yamashita and the Finance Committee. I'm very grateful to be able to speak to you today, despite the fact that this bill will be coming too late for me in my practice. I moved to Hawaii thinking that I could serve an area that was incredibly underserved. And I had a dream that I could have my own clinic where I provided care that was personal, where I actually knew my patients. And I had a role model next door, like Dr. Sira, who is a 78-year-old obstetrician who continues to deliver babies because he takes care of people that other people don't want to take care of. I thought that I would be able to supplement my income enough through doing things like Botox so that I'd be able to take every kind of Medicaid, but I'm just not built like that. And so instead, I've just been taking care of mostly Medicaid and Medicare patients. Because of that, it's been something like 20-30% of my take-home pay that has gone to the GE tax. It's not 5%, it's 5% gross. And that's before I pay my staff, that's before I pay my rent, it's before I pay my utilities. It's before I pay my insurance. It's before everything. So understand that 5% does not remotely represent how much this has impacted me and my business. I am very much pleading with you to get this bill through for everyone else who still has that dream. And so you stop taxing my 78-year-old neighbor 5% every time he delivers a baby for a Medicare patient or Medicaid patient. The incredible injustice that has been done to private practice physicians in the state is really hard to fully explain. So I'm forming a nonprofit with another primary care physician who feels the same way, and I'm going to continue to try to fight. So next year I'll be back here begging you to do something about reimbursement so that's going to work. But please not only pass this bill today, but also please don't amend it so that it will be able to proceed clearly through the rest of the process. And I ask you personally, Finance Committee, make sure this bill makes it all the way to the end. Get it through this year so this doesn't happen anywhere else. And I just wanted to mention one other thing. You hear from Scott and I a lot. His organization had to be purchased by a mainland organization after 50 years in the last year or two because they couldn't do it either. So you got to do something. And my apologies for the level of emotion today, but it's a really sad situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, members' questions. Representative Ward,
I'm surprised that I was going to ask a question.
go ahead.
I forgot your name, Adam. Kelly. The retention, the argument you made for the retention of doctors,
Yes.
I like metrics. Have you done any surveys? Because I know housing and cost of living kind of chases people away, and
It does.
I'm trying to see how much of an impact, if we did this, would we retain the physicians from leaving? Now you said we're 500 or so short. How much would this lessen that if it was passed?
I wish I could tell you exactly, but what I can tell you is about 40% of our physicians are in these small groups. And they are the ones that are closing and leaving. And they are the ones that are paying this tax. So,
I mean, they're self-employed, not the Kaisers and the
right,
Straubs
right.
guys.
Small groups, self-employed, even larger groups that are self-employed, but, they're a group. So these folks are paying this extra, and it would be wonderful to track, and we can survey them specifically. We have not yet. I mean, we've surveyed them about all kinds of things.
How many other?
That would be about 1,600. Yeah. So
You could survey them.
We could survey them. Yes,
That-
I would be happy
I
to
mean,
do that.
I mean, your testifying is good, but if you have numbers saying, look, we lose 15,000 people every year, I just wonder how many of those are the physicians, and if we knew more, because we don't want to lose any more
We
physicians.
lose about 100 of these folks every year.
It's 100 too many, obviously,
Yeah, it's 100 too many, because we're short 700, so it's 100 too many. Yeah,
and growing.
yeah.
Try to get some numbers if you can. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. DOTAX, please. Hi, Deputy. Thank you for the addendum to your testimony, because I was going to ask about the fiscal impact. Could you provide that to the committee in writing after?
Sure, will do.
Just for our edification, could you repeat those numbers again, slowly, please?
Yes, for fiscal year '25, 31.6 million, and I believe that is assuming an effective date of January 1st, 2025. For fiscal year '26, 74.1 million. For fiscal year '27, 77.5 million. For fiscal year '28, 81 million. For fiscal year '29, 84.5 million, and for fiscal year 30, 88.2 million.
Okay, how do you account for the spike from year one, from 31.6 to 74.1 in
That would be the
26?
assumption of the half year,
Half year, okay.
effective January 1st.
Thank you. And then the escalating costs in the out years, is that just due to inflation and other costs?
Yes.
And then do you have a breakdown of how much of this is medical versus dental?
No, I do not. I think it was based on total healthcare expenditures.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? You can stay there. Oh, you have a question?
For Joe Tex real
Okay.
quick.
Go ahead.
Is there a provision that excludes medical clinics? Is it in the same statute, do you know?
In this bill or otherwise that's
outside.
available. There's another provision that excludes hotels, basically ones that qualify under nonprofit type statutes. Medical clinics, I don't believe are specifically excluded unless they qualify under the hospital, certain infirmary type.
I'm just trying to figure out, I know
organizations.
there's been a lot of discussion about individual practitioners not being excluded, but medical clinics are excluded. I'm just trying to figure out where that exclusion comes from.
Yes, so there is another provision in Chapter 237. I don't have that with me right now, but I can provide that to
I'll
you.
try look 237, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Okay. So, is TRICARE already exempt or is it?
Currently, I don't believe there is an exemption
Okay.
in the law that would broadly apply to this category of
Okay,
taxpayers.
but is it someplace else or you don't know?
There, I would have to look at 237 if there may be another category that would apply. But currently, nothing that applies to this category, but I can look to see if there's something else.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, members, we're going to move on to the next bill. Moving on to Senate Bill 3289 SD1 relating to taxation. First up, the Department of Taxation. Okay, thank you. Island Insurance. Okay. Thank you, Servco Pacific.
Aloha, Chair Yamashita and members of the committee. I'm Mark Fukunaga, Executive Chairman of Servco, but more importantly, I represent 67 family businesses throughout Hawaii. I have submitted written testimony as well as I think all 67 businesses have also submitted testimony in a joint letter. But I'd like to emphasize one point today. And I'd like to make a request of all of you, which is probably not a request you get every day. Help us pay more taxes.
Could you repeat that?
Help us pay more taxes. I know. I'm absolutely serious because, any business, and particularly family businesses, because family businesses are part of the identity of any family. Its employees are members. We treat our customers like family as well. We reinvest more, I think, in our businesses than most. So whatever capital we have goes back into the business to hire more employees, build better facilities, improve our products. And by doing that, that business growth produces more excise, income, and property taxes, and the additional employees from that reinvestment pay more income taxes to the state. In Servco's case, we actually did a study, internal study, of what would happen if we had more capital and were able to build one or two more automotive dealerships. Something we have talked about, but we haven't done because we don't have the capital at all times to do that. So We calculated what the state taxes would be on that new dealership and additional employees that would be hired, and be 41 more. And it turns out that the state would be paid back what it would have collected in the estate tax, which has now been invested in this new dealership. It would get back total state taxes in 3 years. So the state would be paid back whatever estate tax it decided to forego in 3 years. And beyond 3 years, as the dealership continues to ramp up, because brand new dealership takes a while to ramp up, over a 20-year period, the state would collect in those types of taxes over 14 times more than what would have been the estate tax. And it's not just unique to us. So Zippy's has done the same analysis. Obviously, Zippy's is everywhere with their restaurants. And in their analysis with a new restaurant and additional employees, they came up with a 4.4-year payback. And again, like our analysis, calculated that it would pay multiple times more in the estate tax that's not imposed. So this is actually a revenue positive measure. So the issue here is not about being taxed. We all willingly pay our fair share. What this is about is how the estate tax works. It is a one-time sledgehammer of a tax that breaks up thriving family businesses. And from our standpoint, and I think from the state standpoint and the community standpoint, it's much better to use excise, income, and property taxes, which are predictable, recurring, and manageable, and that don't result in broken businesses. So from our standpoint, why kill the golden goose? The golden goose of family businesses. Why not grow the golden goose and get a lot more eggs? That's how we see it. Now, we support SB 3289, but we are suggesting an amendment, 2 amendments really. One is to take the language from a prior bill that was heard and approved by this committee, HB 2653, which provided for a deduction of the value of a family business from the calculated value of the estate and not taxing it. We would prefer to have that in this bill rather than expanding the marital exemption, which we frankly think is too broad. We think it is more responsible to limit this to the stock of closely held family businesses as defined in our Internal Revenue Code. So it's a very narrow definition. The second amendment we would propose is to delay this for 1 year. We recognize the pressures of the Maui wildfires. We want to support that effort. And from our standpoint, 1 year, deferring the effectiveness for 1 year would not hurt us, but would greatly help in our future planning around this tax. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next is Sutter Home Bus and Mobility.
Hi, Chair and the committee members. My name is Gabby Soderholm. I am our operations manager at Soderholm Bus and Mobility. I'm in the second generation, just pretty newly in it. I've been full-time for 4 years of our family business, although when I was 5, my birthday present from my dad was a stack of business cards, and I was lot girl. So I've been in our family business. Pretty sure my parents had kids for child labor. So this is very near and dear to my heart. I moved home to Hawaii during COVID when I was living on the mainland working for another bus company, getting some experience. And I came home. I still live at home with my parents because it's very expensive to live in Hawaii. And this, if Soderholm sales, when passed to my brother and I, as we intend to, is levied against us, it will decimate our business. So this is very serious. And I feel like the healthcare group right before us, because there has been a mass exodus of small family-owned businesses in Hawaii. They've had to sell, they've had to move on for various reasons, like we spoke about. It's not just a taxation issue, it's cost of living, it's availability of healthcare, it's everything. So this would help support family businesses staying in Hawaii, supporting the families, supporting the employees, because just like what Mark Fukunaga said, it's everybody in the company is like a family. We sell wheelchair-accessible vehicles and auto-adaptive aids. We are the only ones in the state that do that. So if we were to leave, there would be nobody to serve that community. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in being able to get people out on the roads, even if they have disabilities, get to their jobs, get to school, and things like that. So other companies have come in, they've tried, it doesn't work. We've been in business since 1989, and my brother and I, who's off selling buses somewhere right now, we have all intentions of staying in Hawaii, raising our families in Hawaii like our parents did for us, and being in business. And exactly like Mark said, we'll pay all of our taxes throughout our time as business owners and income earners. So thank you for hearing me speak today, and I stand strongly in support of this bill with the amendments that Mark laid out.
Okay, thank you. Next is Appleseed Center.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm Gavin Thornton, the Executive Director of the Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice. In recent years, this legislature has taken important steps to better support our working families, including increasing the minimum wage and creating a working families tax credit. Yet, incomes still lag behind soaring housing costs, pushing families out who have called Hawaii home for generations. Now we're discussing a $43 million tax cut for the wealthiest 0.2% in Hawaii. I respect this bill's proponents, some of whom I'm fortunate to know, and some of whom are actually donors to Hawaii Appleseed. But my primary concern is for the well-being of Hawaii's economy and for our 1.4 million people, who I see as Hawaii's golden goose. This session, the legislature already rejected essential proposals needed to support working families, including $23 million that could have provided breakfast and lunch for all public school students, $13 million that could have prevented the eviction of 2,500 families through rent relief and mediation, $42 million for a child tax credit of $325 per child, which could have supported 176,000 children. $325 might not seem like a lot, but for many families, it's what's needed to pay the rent and pay the grocery bill. This estate tax, right now, it kicks in for couples with more than $11 million. A tax of $100,000 might feel painful for a family with a $12 million estate, but the $325 that keeps a family from getting evicted feels a lot more valuable. If we truly want a thriving economy where Hawaii's working families are able to make ends meet, we need to align our policy with our stated values. The estate tax cuts in this bill do the opposite. Please don't pass it. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Next is Hawaii Children Action Network speaks.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Nicole Wu from Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks. We're an advocacy organization for Hawaii's keiki, of course, and their parents, especially working class and middle class families that are struggling so much to afford to live here. Hawaii, we all know, we have so many needs right now, as Gavin mentioned. Childcare expenses, housing expenses, food has gone up. And we've been told that we can't afford to pay for anything this session, especially because of the tragedy on Maui. So this just doesn't make sense to us that we would be giving a cut to those at the very top. As Gavin said, the estate tax is estimated to only affect those in the top 0.2%. That's like if we put 1,000 people in one room and the two people with the most wealth were the only ones affected. That's how this tax is so well targeted at the top. The reason it's so well targeted at the top is that the amount that's been exempted from the estate tax has gone up by more than 8 times since 2001. A single person can pass down $5.5 million tax-free, and a couple can pass $11 million tax-free. So this also protects the small businesses that we're so worried about. We're really getting at the biggest, wealthiest families. And when you look at our state compared to others, we have an extreme wealth concentration here. That's one of the highest in the nation. When you look at our population, and then you look at the number of households with more than $30 million, 59% more of our population has more than $30 million than we should. We have the 7th highest concentration of extreme wealth in the entire nation. And the estate tax is designed to slow down that concentration of wealth at the top. So we really respectfully urge you to defer this bill. It's not the right time to give tax breaks to those at the top. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Hamay Appliance, Clyde Hamay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in favor of this bill. Ever since I started working, in Maui, we've been in business for 55 years, 3rd generation, and I've seen so many companies, and I'm sure for every major island has lost dealers like we are. We are in appliance, sales, and service. And throughout the years, I've had associates on every major island, but right now, I think you can count it on one hand how many of those people are still in business and doing the kind of service that the local people want, sales and service. And it is for, we've seen too many companies close up on Maui, on Kauai, on the Big Island. And I think this bill will help the local families survive and be able to compete against the big boxes that are invading our islands and closing up some of our businesses. So I urge you to support this measure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure?
Good afternoon. I am Raquel Gus, 3rd generation of Ultras. We've been around for 55 years as well, and just even hearing the stories about how do we perpetuate family business, it is something that I was gone for 15 years, and my goal was to come home to be a part of this next generation. I'm very proud to say, even in our small family business, we have actually provided 100 and created 100 new jobs in the last 2 years. We've given away more than $3 million in the last 2 years. We plan to continue to give away and put an emphasis back into our community. So one of the things that comes up for me always when I hear these things is this isn't about how do we make more money, this is about how do we keep our community alive. And what we've heard is there's so much competition coming into our community. We want to be able to fight back, and we want to be able to perpetuate great family businesses. So I urge you to support this bill with the amendments that Mark has lined out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, members, questions. Representative Garrett.
Oh, thank you. DOTAX, please. I know you folks did not submit testimony, and this is ultimately a policy call for the legislature. But can you inform us, do you happen to have the data on how much this, the state collected from estate taxes?
How much we've collected from estate taxes?
Yeah, just trying to figure out like what the fiscal impact of this bill would be.
So I have numbers from the last 2 fiscal years. The total collections for fiscal year 23 was $58.1 million, and for fiscal year 22 was $57.4 million. That's for the estate and generation skipping tax.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? Representative Kobayashi.
For DOTAX, is there a way of making sure that money from these family businesses are really, number one, reinvested either in the company or in the community via donations to, say, nonprofits? I mean, is there a way of tying this exemption to the companies, the family companies returning money either into their business to grow or into the community for worthy causes?
So you're thinking like maybe having eligibility requirement to claim an exemption, tying that to a donation. I mean, I guess it's possible. We'd have to look at how the mechanics of that would work and think about that a little bit. But it would be a little odd because that's not how the estate tax is currently set up with those types of eligibility requirements. Right now, it's fairly straightforward in that you take the value of the estate, right, minus some deductions, apply a tax rate. So that would make it a little bit more akin to how income tax credits would be administered, which is not really how the estate tax is set up. Not to say that it can't be done, but.
Okay. I'm just thinking pie in the sky kind of situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further question, Representative Kahlo.
Thank you. Another question for DOTAX is, I know you may not have this information, but I'll ask anyway. Of those fiscal implications you gave us for FY23 and FY22, do you know how many businesses and or individuals or trusts that represents in each fiscal year? Is it 2 businesses? Is it 20?
I don't have a breakdown like that. I can look further if our office has any further breakdown, but I don't have that with me right now.
Thank you.
Other questions, Representative Ward.
Mr. Fukunaga still, there you are, Mr. Fukunaga. What generation are you for Servco Pacific?
Third generation.
Third generation.
Company was started in 1919 by my grandfather.
And with this bill, how many generations might it create?
Hopefully another 3 or more.
And on and on.
But
I guess the point is, you mentioned the multiplier effect of what reinvestment and then ongoing. Could you repeat? Is there a number, like most multipliers, you put in $1, you get a 5 or 10. Have you boiled it down to a multiplier other than the narrative that you just gave?
no, we were not able to measure that multiplier effect beyond what Servco actually does. So we just measured the taxes, the state taxes that a new Servco dealership would pay in excise, property, and income taxes, corporate income taxes, plus with our new 41 employees, what their income taxes to the state would be. And when we aggregated that, the what would have been the estate tax gets repaid under 3 years, actually 2 years, 11 months, and you end up over 20 years paying 14 times more than
Okay, that
what
was
the estate tax.
The 14 times one.
Yes.
How many employees does Servco Pacific have?
We have 1,084.
How big is your wage budget? I mean, your salary in what you have to pay. The point is,
Yeah.
there's been a statement that I'd like you to defend that this is a tax break for the wealthiest. You're a big corporation, one of the biggest corporations in Hawaii. Is this just all about you?
No, not at all. I mean,
Why not?
This is about, we think, creating good jobs in Hawaii. This is about providing tax revenues to Hawaii. It's about investing in the community and supporting nonprofits. It's about providing career paths for our youngest members in the community to rise up beyond, let's say, unfortunately, a lot of national fast food chains, it's really hard to go very far, and I think local companies here offer that potential of a real career in good jobs. I would also say, in terms of the tax impact, The 52 million and 48 million cited by DOTAX is the entire estate tax. So in this case, we're only talking about those estate taxes that are imposed on a family business. I believe in earlier testimony in front of the Senate Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee, the DOTAX oral testimony there said the tax on a family business shareholder passing, I think they quantified more like 14.8 million. So a much smaller number than 58 million, first of all. And because the estate tax really depends on who dies in a particular year or doesn't die, I think it's more accurate to take the average. And the 5-year average is 42 million. Total estate taxes, and again, that is total. And we fully support paying estate taxes on things like, stock portfolios or real estate, investment real estate. We're talking really here about family businesses that don't have the cash because they put all the profits back into a living business that you can't dismantle and just pull cash out of other than by selling it.
And if sold, is it where the mainland bigger bucks come in and take over from these family businesses?
Absolutely. Public companies, most of which are mainland or even globally based, they're public companies. They do not pay the estate tax. They don't even think about it. All of us in family businesses think about it all the time because it's a looming 20% sledgehammer that will happen as soon as somebody unexpectedly dies. Public companies don't have to do that because they don't pay the estate tax. Their shareholders do. And their shareholders, they get an estate tax, they just sell some shares on the New York Stock Exchange, no problem. Business continues without a problem. Doesn't miss a beat. In a family business, the owners of a family business don't have a stock exchange to sell off little pieces. We can't sell it easily. So what happens is if the owners get hit by an estate tax, the only source of funds becomes the business. And the business doesn't have that kind of cash lying around because we're all trying to compete against big national companies. So we got to use every dollar of capital to stay current. If someone moves across the street from us, brand new dealership, makes our dealership looks bad, do we just sort of let them eat our lunch, or do we reinvest back in our facility and upgrade it so we're competitive? Every single time we're going to do that instead of stockpiling money somewhere in the theoretical event that someone will die next year. So we reinvest it back, and we don't have that ability. We're under a handicap. We have one hand tied behind our back when we are up against big public companies.
Thank you for participating in the political process. I haven't seen you here before, but I hope you continue to come and to continue with the generation after you as you have followed those before you. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Representative.
A question. Thank you, Representative Kobayashi.
Mark, what if we change tactic altogether and suggest that life insurance premiums be deductible?
That's an interesting idea. It would be helpful.
Because that's one way that you folks can survive the loss of a premium family member.
Yeah, I think my reaction is it's helpful, but we still end up paying a lot in life insurance. And life insurance only works up to a point. I mean, at Servco, we're kind of at the point, every time the company grows, the company gets more valuable. So then you got to buy more life insurance. And we've kind of been on that growth path. And we're at the point where we just can't afford to buy any more insurance. So and right now we're.
But if it were deductible, you could perhaps buy more life insurance.
We could, but I would
that's the
say
point.
that, yes, that's a good point. But then you'd also divert capital from what could be better jobs and frankly, expanding the company to yield more in excise income and property taxes, as well as, helping the community in other ways with a bigger business. The reality is, even though you'd get the deductibility, you still have to devote a significant amount of funding to life insurance companies outside of Hawaii.
All right, thanks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Further
Representative.
questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2725, relating to pass-through and entity taxation. Okay, first up is Department of Taxation. Okay, thank you, Tax Foundation.
Good afternoon, Jane McMillan on behalf of the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on our written comments submitted for the measure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, questions, members? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next bill, this House Senate Bill 2505 SD2 HD1 relating to the Public Utilities Commission. First up is DCCA, Division of Consumer Advocate. Okay, thank you. Next is PUC. Thank you. Okay, next is Hawaii Clean Power Alliance. On Zoom. Not present? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing
Hi,
none.
Hawaiian.
Nope,
Hawaiian Electric.
go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Craig Shimokawa with Hawaiian Electric offering comments in appreciation for the amendments already made to the to this bill and just in support of that current language that gives the commission the authority to oversee reliance and resilience and preserving the discretionary authority to establish the electricity reliability administrator. Thank you. We have no more questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Questions, members? Okay, Representative Kilo.
For the PUC, please. So I understand that this is for you folks to assess system resilience as a metric for you folks when it comes to pretty much Hawaiian Electric. But does any of this have the chance to increase any potential rates to any ratepayers?
Yes, it does. So part of the bill actually provides for funding for this. That's already in the statute. There's a small technical amendment that would allow that funding to go either to the person or entity that we hire as this Hawaii Electric Reliability Administrator or to us. But that would be an additional surcharge on on ratepayers. I think actually, so the intent is that that surcharge would actually be imposed on renewable energy developers. Ultimately, those costs are typically passed through via a power purchase agreement to customers. So yes, it's possible that it would raise customer rates, but I think it's a relatively small amount for the importance of this measure and this objective.
Do you know the small amount, or has that been determined?
It has not been determined yet. I think it would be important because it would be placed on renewable energy developers. We want to make sure that we look at how to do that fairly so that we can adequately fund it. I'd be happy to get back to you on an amount that we think it might be.
Thank you, because we gotta understand, right, a small amount to you is a big amount to someone else, right? And I constantly said, when you're doing dollar by dollar, any increase can put folks over. So I just would like to know what the number would end up looking like, please.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and the commission is really focused on improving electric affordability. It's really critical at this time, particularly. I think it is important to recognize the trade-offs here. Like when folks do lose power, or the grid is less resilient, that also has costs to customers, right? They may lose food in their refrigerator or medicine that's refrigerated, or those kinds of things have costs as well. So I think it's important to recognize those trade-offs, even if there may be a a slight increase in another place.
But to an extent, the PUC should have, prior to this, be looking at the resiliency of some of the grids. It's not
Yes.
my district constituents' faults that no one looked at the grids on the west side of Oahu compared to newer grids that have been installed and not been revisited, right? So to that extent, that's my only concern.
I
I'm
hear
all for
that,
grid
yeah.
fortification, but as we've continued to do it, the people that bear the cost are the one that had no more money for the cost, right?
Yes, and just very briefly, I agree, and we have actually implemented a number of the measures within this kind of piece of the statute already, so we are working on it, we've got a number of things ongoing or that have been in progress. I think the important thing here is we're recognizing that, one, we need to include resilience in this, and the landscape is changing pretty dramatically in rapid pace, so we want to, to bolster those efforts that we're doing.
So if it's possible, Chair, if they could just follow up with the information requested.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'd be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 1511 SD2 HD1 relating to Research Corporation of the University of Hawaii. First up is University of Hawaii. Vasilis.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Vasilis Sirmas. I'm the Vice President for Research and Innovation at UH. We stand on our written comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is RCUH.
Chair and Representatives, Danny Govea, Executive Director of RCUH. I stand on my written testimony in opposition to this bill.
Okay, thank you. And next is Department of Land and Natural Resources. Here. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none. Questions, members? Yeah, Representative.
Wait, did two of you guys from UH just testify, one in opposition and one in support? Oh,
Actually, let me clarify for you, Representative. The Research Corporation of the University of Hawaii is not part of the University of Hawaii. They are a state agency which is attached to the university for administrative purposes. So RCUH is not UH.
interesting. Okay.
Okay.
I guess maybe for RCUH first. I guess I have concerns based on the testimony from HGEA on all employees being exempt. How many employees does RCUH have?
We have approximately 3,000 employees.
Wow. Okay. And how many of them fall under HGEA?
None of our employees are under HGA.
Why is that?
Because it's the people that we support. We have a core staff of approximately 34 people, all housed in the East-West Center right now. The remaining personnel are hired to support research projects across the state for the benefit of the University of Hawaii and at the direction of the University of Hawaii and the researchers that get primarily extramural funding from the federal government.
So are the 3,000 employees full-time employees or are they temporary
It's
employees?
a mix of temporary, part-time, full-time. It's a quite extensive list of different types of people and depending on the needs of the research project.
Okay,
So they are not funded by G funds or any funding from the state general funds.
Okay. I'm still a little bit confused. What is the reason why they're not? I mean, I maybe you can explain to me being attached to UH, that relationship, and why these people are not part of HGEA, or how all of them are exempt.
I defer to Vasilis a bit on this.
Okay.
I do want to say that RCUH is here to support the University of Hawaii. So we don't make decisions and tell the university what to do. We're here to support, and 96% roughly of our work is to support the University of Hawaii.
Okay, who at the university oversees RCUH then?
That would be, it used to be the president until there was a bill that became a law, I believe, in 2017 or 2018, where the president was removed of being the president of UH and RCUH because it would create conflicts of interest. And the RCUH now is overseen by an independent board and the executive director. I am part of the board, a non-voting member.
Okay. So explain the attached relationship and then the employees not being part of HGEA.
Okay, so let me back up a little bit. Historically, this bill was written in 1965, and a lot of changes have been made over the years. Nothing significant to the actual statute itself and the extent of what the roles were. But as far as the makeup of RCOH and who was in charge of RCOH, that has changed over the years, and we do have a pretty lengthy historical summary of that on our website now because it's been in question before. But Vasilis is right that recently the president it flip-flopped. At one point, the Ledge decided that UH should have more control over RCOH. That's when they put the president in charge of it. Then they flipped it back to an executive director who answers to the board for RCOH.
Okay.
And that board makeup has been changed over the years as well. Currently, we have 2 board members of the Board of Regents that answer to, of course, the Board of Regents and then the president. So I answer to the board, and the board answers to the Board of Regents and the president, as well as Vasilis as the VP for research.
Sorry, I'm not sure. So you're saying the board authorized the exemptions of these positions, the employees?
No, that's by statute.
Oh, so the statute allows the employees to be exempt?
Correct.
That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand.
No, it is
HGEA's
complicated, and I will
testimony.
say, the UH-RCH relationship is one of probably the only one in the country. We have some similar to it, but nothing exactly like us. But overall, I think the important issue here is we needed to have a mechanism to hire and fire quickly for research projects because the state of Hawaii couldn't make commitments to hire people and have people on payroll when they come to do a particular research project, and then we no longer have a need for their services, and we can't keep them on to support work that we didn't need to be done. So the extramural award and funding that we get to come in, we make UH researchers, UHPIs, make the commitment to, usually again, the federal government, to do research projects and come up with a proposal, budget, everything that they need, and they get awarded, whatever they said they're gonna do.
So are these mostly just like short-term hires, less than a year?
It should be, yes, but it depends on the project. So if a project is a 3-year project and the federal government agrees that with the UH proposal that the PI puts out, says I can do this in 3 years and I need 5 people for 3 years, then that would be the required period.
Do you have employees that have been there longer than?
We do have some.
How long?
We had core staff employees, which is a core staff that supports everyone, which is a 34. We've had, I think, 2 people that went 30 years.
30 years?
Correct. Which makes sense for core staff.
Okay.
Because again.
How about researchers?
Researchers are through the UHPIs, and then UHPIs hire researchers to support their research projects.
And they've been there 30 years as well?
I don't think we have too many people who have been there a long time, but there have been some who have been there a long time, but they usually switch between projects and funding.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I guess my last set of questions is on the new clinical trial building that you guys are you constructing that through RCUH, or is that?
No, that's through UH and through Vasilis.
Okay. Who oversees the construct? Wait, so did that project go through procurement?
This project was a blend of funds. There was $6.5 million from the federal government. I think it was from NIH. $6.5 million was actually matching funds from the state of Hawaii. And then there was another tranche of money later, another $6.5 million, around $19 million overall. Usually we have in our regions policy, it is our region's policy that when we have an extramurally funded project, that is automatically service ordered to RCUH, because RCUH provides two services for the university: procurement and employment. So for people to understand, RCUH is the Altris of UH for extramural funds. And then they do...
But Altris doesn't do construction.
Oh,
right?
and I'm coming to that.
If she's still here, maybe she can answer.
I said when it comes to HR, right? So they do our hiring for extramural funds, and then they do procurement, which is exempt from 103D. On this particular project, it was decided, the Board of Regents decided, because it's a blend of funds between state and generally obligated bonds, for the project to go to RCUH. So the Board of Regents voted for that. The administration brought it to them. And then the Board of Directors, I believe, of RCUH also admitted or accepted the projects, because in general, we're not supposed to have construction projects at RCUH. This one, though it went for procurement up to RCUH, it has been overseen by the UH facilities, both the construction and the construction management. I hope it makes sense.
Who at UH facilities oversees?
That would be Vice President Gouveia and her crew oversaw.
No relation.
No, there is
relation. Oh, okay.
So VPA is my wife, Jan Gouveia.
Okay.
She is not, my understanding is that UH Cancer Center took over the responsibility and not UH facilities in Manoa.
Okay.
But that's all on the UH side. And I want to get back to the construction part. We do not do construction management, but if UH is doing construction and they're doing construction purchases with federal funds that come through a federal award, then we do procurement to support those construction funds if they're buying materials or purchases, medical equipment or whatnot to fill the offices that they're doing.
My concern is that it seems like it's coming back through UH, but it's still getting exempted from procurement.
That is correct.
And I don't think UH is exempt from procurement, so
that is correct.
I'm just trying to figure out how that works.
Your
Okay.
statement is correct.
Okay,
Representative.
thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
Question.
Representative Kobayashi.
This is not for this year, but in the long run, if UH were given special and greater flexibility in having somebody at UH be the chief personnel officer and the chief procurement officer, not reporting to the state's personnel officer or procurement officer, would that solve the problem?
How would I answer that without being
Because
put
the-
in trouble? Of course,
the
it would
whole
solve the
purpose of
problem.
RCUH
Usually, you're absolutely correct, and I don't know, maybe I'm going to eat my words. In every other university in the United States, this is the rule, and therefore there is no RCUH and UH. There is one university that does procurement and hiring for everything. Intramural funds, general funds, extramural funds, revolving funds, special funds, every kind of fund.
Exemption from retirement system, et cetera.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I don't know if I'm ever going to see that in my lifetime, Representative.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may add my 2 cents, so, the reason why I came to RCUH was to support this, and I strongly believe that RCUH is a vital part of research for the state of Hawaii, and UH and RCUH has a unique relationship, like I said earlier, and if we're going to make changes to that relationship, which I'm not opposed to, I think it's fine. However, if we're going to do that, we need to sit down and make a blueprint to move forward, not just press all these buttons and unravel a whole mess, because the university has been bringing in a lot of funding, a lot of record funding, And I will say that it has been processed, and RCH has been doing an excellent job. We get paid for what we do. We do not make money. We're not in the business of making money. And all I'm telling everyone is, if you folks want to do that, let's do that. Sit down at the table and not nitpick at the statute and change just bits and pieces of it. Look at the entire picture and do what's right, because all I care about is what's best for the state, the university, and RCUH. And if that doesn't include RCUH anymore, or change the names, or whatever it may be, I think that's the appropriate way to do it, and that's what I said in my testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions, members? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next bill. Let's see. Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 2726 SD2 HD1 relating to condominiums. First up is CAI.
Chair and committee members, my name is Phil Nerney, testifying on behalf of CAI. CAI supports this bill because it reflects the unanimous recommendation of the condominium task force created pursuant to legislation from the legislature last year. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Hawaii Realtors? Okay, thank you. Misakian, Greg Misakian? On Zoom?
Yes. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. As I said earlier, my name is Greg Misakian, and I'm here speaking today as an individual. As I mentioned earlier, I also serve on my condominium association's board of directors. While I support this bill, it is only with the amendment I've requested in my written testimony, which will require the LRB to complete their report by November 1st of this year. To highlight further why an ombudsman's office is needed urgently, on March 4th, my condominium association's board president took a job as an associate attorney with the law firm representing the association. He did not inform the board of directors of his new role, and I only found out about this officially via an email on March 19th with a letter from the law firm that said they had quit us on March 11th, leaving us without any legal counsel. And just when you think it can't get any worse, this past Easter Sunday weekend started out with a special board meeting on Good Friday, called by our board president to censure me in front of owners for something I didn't do. On Easter Sunday, numerous owners also reported to me that the board president and the former board president, both who I had raised concerns of misconduct about, were going door to door asking owners to sign a petition to remove me from the board. Some informed me that they were being pressured to sign and felt harassed. Persecuting an honest and caring board member on Good Friday and Easter Sunday should give you a very clear image of just how abusive and out of control things have gotten. And as a Christian, I am also offended. On Monday, April 1st, sadly, our resident manager passed away. That was just a couple days ago. He had been constantly pressured by the two board presidents mentioned here to do things that were improper and encouraged to participate in spreading false information. For the sake of the residents of Hawaii, who I am trying to help, please amend this bill to provide an LRB report this year so legislation can be drafted and hopefully enacted in 2025 with LRB recommendations. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, questions, members? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3139 SD2 HD2 relating to crisis services. First up is the Department of Law. Okay, thank you. Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Thank you. Community Alliance on Prisons, Kat Brady.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Kat Brady testifying with comments on this bill. We totally support the behavioral health centers, but we really want to impress upon the committee that it needs to be mental health emergency workers who are the first contact with people who are having experiencing an episode. An armed law enforcement officer is really intimidating. And we think when people are in that super vulnerable state, they need trained personnel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Queens Health System.
Thanks, Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. We'll largely stand on a written testimony. I just want to underscore our interest in providing training to law enforcement and not undercutting the MHEW process, which has been working very, very well right now. I think Department of Health has some additional amendments that we're amenable to, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Aloha Care. Not present. Department of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Courtney Matsu, Medical Director and Acting Administrator for Adult Mental Health Division. We stand in support of this measure, primarily for Behavioral Health Crisis Center. We also want to underscore the importance of the mental health emergency worker as the personnel who are most equipped to make important decisions regarding crises. We do take into consideration some of the concerns expressed by law enforcement and first responders and want to maintain their safety. We did request to strike Section 8 because this is a new project and we wanted to further develop the workflow processes with the various stakeholders, including law enforcement, the police, and psychiatric facilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify? Questions, members? Okay, Representative Takanouchi.
Department of Law Enforcement, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. I know I had some questions on this in Health Committee too, so hoping to maybe kind of pick up from there.
No problem.
Given the concerns that are coming out now from the healthcare, the healthcare side about the mental health emergency workers and this not wanting to replace that system that's in place, is that the intent? I got the sense that this was more the intent when we were originally talking about it in Health Committee, that like understanding the need to maybe streamline some things. Are you guys really wedded to having this Section 8, or is it really necessary?
So there have been discussions on this long before the session started. That's why a number of these bills actually came about. And the idea of the crisis intervention officers being there and able to work with somebody in crisis is a valid and important point. Right now, what we've got is we have a law enforcement officer is called onto a scene to encounter somebody. Their options are call an MHEW if certain conditions are met. And if certain things are met, that MHEW may refer them to a mental health facility or not. And what this bill does is now lets them also take them to a behavioral health crisis center. That's one option that a law enforcement officer has. They only have two other options that left at this point in time. They can arrest them, in which case now we have them in lockup, which probably for somebody in crisis is not the right place for them. Or they leave them on the street where they can either be a danger to themselves or to others. The idea of the crisis intervention officer isn't new. HPD currently has a number of these officers. And while every officer is required to have crisis intervention training, the idea of having somebody on shift that can also come down and see, is there something else that we can do with this individual other than take them into custody? Once a law enforcement officer takes them into custody, there are constitutional protections that now come into play. They just can't put hands on somebody, cuff them, and take them to a facility for help. They can arrest them for a crime. If they don't commit a crime, they're going to have to leave them on the street. And somebody who is screaming and yelling and clearly in crisis and clearly at risk hasn't committed a crime. So an officer just can't do anything about it. They can call an MHEW, and the MHEW may get on the phone and ask the officer to ask questions of them, which often does not work. Or they can come down, and then they can make a call. So if you take away the law enforcement officers, the ability to have a crisis intervention officer, okay, but nothing changes from the law enforcement officers' options now if that power is taken out of this bill. And I find it disingenuous that Department of Health is saying, well, we need to get people together. Long before Department of Health or Department of Law Enforcement was asked to join the discussions on this, Department of Health was involved in these discussions, along with the prosecutors, the public defenders, various providers that work in this area. Queens was involved. Many partners were involved in this. For whatever reason, they now don't want law enforcement to have crisis intervention officers. I can't explain that. I have my suspicions, but I'm not going to share them here. The reality is there is a big gap between what a mental health emergency worker can and is able to do and what the law enforcement officers now currently can do. There is a gap there. And to say that a mental health emergency worker is always going to be available anytime a law enforcement officer is called to a scene to respond to somebody in crisis, and you have them happen here at the Capitol. So our officers come and we deal with them. We do the best we can to try and help them. We've had instances where people in crisis end up dead because the MHEW is not available and a CIO is not available to help. We're trying to fill this gap, and we're willing to do that.
So is the intention of, I guess, the crisis intervention officer, the intent is not to replace this program that we have
Oh, no, not at all.
in place?
We recognize
But you feel that there's not adequate support being given through the current program? And that's why we want to have this gap group also
there's
available?
a gap, and all of the things that I have not been personal, they're all anecdotal. But I know that there's a lot of times when officers are on the phone and they're getting questions like, can you see if they've eaten today? Can you see how they're feeling today? Did something happen that they're not feeling well today, or what might be upsetting them? I'm sorry, that kind of thing isn't going to help.
I thought part of the intention of these positions were that they are highly trained and they are also going to be able to give additional, tools to like the responding HPD officers so that maybe they would be able to get these kind of assessments when they were making the calls.
And that's exactly the idea with the crisis intervention officers. There's an officer that your typical beat cop could say, hey, I need to get a CIO down here right away. They're already on call, they're already on shift, driving around somewhere. You can get them down, and they can make the assessment, hey, you know what? We need to get this person to some professional who can make the call on how best to help them rather than leave them on the street or arrest them for something. There's a lot of times they may commit a crime. Not every offender is a criminal. Every criminal is an offender, but not every offender is a criminal that really needs to be in lockup or jail. A lot of them need help, and with the increasing number of homeless, increasing number of people that are suffering from mental health issues, whether they are, whatever the cause of them, there is a growing number of these people that are officers. When I say our officers, I'm also talking about county, federal, all of the law enforcement officers encounter, and they need some tools to be able to work with them and to help get them the help that they need.
Okay. I guess to follow up on HHSC's concerns, though, so if you guys are able to divert, like the responding officers are going to divert. I know we just opened our crisis center here on the neighbor islands. Is there anywhere else to take them except the emergency room? Which I think is why we're trying to avoid with this
I'm not
program,
sure what the
MH1.
status is. I know that we have officers, the neighbor islands officers are trained. They have some CIOs. Their opportunities and abilities and options are limited, but I also understand that the idea of the BHCs, the Behavioral Health Crisis Centers, we have one we just stood up in Evelyn. And the idea I know is that Department of Health and others are looking to stand these up around the state. So at some point, I envision seeing them at various places around the state, not
But
just
currently, they're
Oahu.
probably on the neighbor islands where there's no crisis center. They're likely just going to go to the
Probably,
emergency
yes.
room
Yes,
without
ma'am.
this assessment by the
Yes, ma'am.
MHEW. Okay, and sorry, I think when I asked in health, and so I think when we were talking about the qualifications for these positions, that they were mainly law enforcement, maybe had like social work background or some kind of things, people who, you know, kind of gravitated to those things, but it doesn't have to be someone with like medical background, a medical
That's
background,
correct,
not
yes.
necessarily. Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Chair, can I do one follow-up to Department of Health?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Department of Health, or actually maybe Queens, who I think has the contract for the MH1 referrals. Sorry, I'm not sure. Whoever has the answer. So this gap that we're talking about, is there a big gap happening with the calls and the services that for our officers? Or are you guys keeping records, I guess, on how many calls are being made and how you're overseeing that contract?
So, yeah.
We are keeping track of that. We've looked at that data. There may be, at certain times, 3 or 4 second delay. I'm not aware of any time a call isn't being picked up. We actually have protocols in place that if an MHEW worker is on the phone with someone else, that the call will get transferred to someone else. So there shouldn't necessarily be a delay. We look at any glitches in the system and then try to rectify them. So
Okay, and like,
There is one caveat, though, on the neighbor islands. Sometimes in the rural areas, their cell phone reception is not adequate, and so it might not even catch onto our system. So we wouldn't even know that there was an attempt made to call into the system because there's no cell phone.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess for
that's the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then DOH, I guess, are you in contact with the different county law enforcements about, have they been making complaints, or is there a venue for them to give that feedback to you if they feel their officers aren't getting through for whatever reason? Do you guys do that kind of
They
follow-up
could,
with
but
them?
right now, it's anecdotal. We haven't formally tracked that data, but we could.
We have,
Okay.
sorry, can I just add on to that? We do have, the person that heads up our MHEW program has a monthly meeting with HPD and I think other folks to get updates, and if there are issues, we get feedback then.
Okay,
Happy to put you in touch with her.
okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Carlo.
Thank you. I think this question is for both of you as well. I'm not sure. Speaking to Rep. Takenouchi's former question to law enforcement about process for neighbor islands and rural communities, if we don't have a facility to take them to right now, that is to the emergency room, that is already busy, overrun, and at capacity. So it makes sense that the HHSCs are concerned at how this process fills in. So I don't know if there's any plans for expansion, or if we could speak to how this bill is a starting point, but how you're going to address the concerns to this process that's supposed to be super helpful, but on neighbor islands and rural communities, you're basically overcapacitating the ER rooms at this time. So I don't know if there's a way to speak to procedurally how this is going to work for neighbor island communities, and in particular, because HHSC is concerned, those hospitals on Kauai and on Hawaii Island.
So for the neighbor islands and in regards to HHSC hospitals, we've had recent discussions regarding the MHEW and emphasizing that actually having an MHEW as part of the process would actually help their situation, because you have somebody who's well-trained and could identify whether that situation, the disposition would be appropriate for them to go to the hospital or not. Whereas if it was somebody who is probably less qualified, there might be error on the side of putting everybody more towards the hospital. And so that we felt that having MHEW as, keeping them as part of the process is very important.
So are there going to be alternatives stood up? So say this bill passes, because there's a capacity concern if there are not other places besides hospitals and state hospitals to send people to, not only cost, coordination, communication. So if the MHEWs and law enforcement are both referring and the ER is the only place, how are we looking ahead, actually not ahead, how are we looking forward to addressing the concerns of rural communities with the implementation of this program?
So we currently have just one behavioral health crisis center, and we just opened that in Iwilei. There's another bill that speaks about providing additional funding to support a second behavioral health crisis center somewhere in the state. I think there was some push for locating that on the Big Island. The Department of Health is, we are working together with the different counties to identify how we can provide similar services as a BHCC and within our limited financial resources, as well as looking at the different counties and their population size, right? So it might make sense for us to have a larger BHCC in Honolulu, whereas on Kauai, given the population size, it might not be financially responsible to open its own freestanding facility. And so we've been working with Mahelona to see if we could work and develop a crisis service, but not necessarily a freestanding facility. So that's some of the things that we are looking at. Certainly, it'll take some time and a lot of discussion, but we've, like Queens has said, we have these regular meetings to go over the data and to discuss any kind of challenges that might be happening.
Thank you. I think you answered that question. It's important that I think this is important legislation, but it causes concern for rural communities on the neighbor islands, and I don't know if we've looked at other legislation or we're doing it in tandem before it becomes an even greater issue with capacity at our hospitals.
Yes. We do support crisis intervention training for officers. I don't want to take away from that. I think that's very important. We just want to make sure that we have the MHEW continue to be part of the process.
Perfect. And I would hope that we could also have contracts to help if we're not standing up a new physical facility or we need to get to scale. There are other entities outside of our state hospitals or contracts that could help mitigate or host some of these intervention services, so that if law enforcement, which we're excited they could help, refer more, but where do you refer them to and where do they get the support needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where there's opportunities outside of our hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question. Thank you.
Hey,
Representative Cochran.
thanks. And for you folks, coming from Lahaina, I mean, I would think that this would be on your radar right now, being with all the mental health issues and just the trauma and the PTSD and all of the above due to the fires and the survivors there today. I mean, every time I go back home, I'm hearing about another suicide. It's occurring daily. So is that not on anyone's radar to look into? And speaking of other outside sources, the law enforcement does awesome. Kaiser Permanente popped up a mobile unit out there that's been assisting myself, yes, and many others in our community. Maui AIDS Foundation, Salvation Army, I mean, all the nonprofits have pulled together to help assist in all always, from mental health issues to obviously, feeding and clothing and what have you. And so, how do you folks interact with that? Or is there any discussions to beef this up? Because it's not ending. It's getting worse every day.
Yes. So for Lahaina and Maui, it's slightly different from the other islands in the sense that we major disaster, and we have added resources, federal funds that we've poured into Lahaina and Maui, and through that we have a crisis counseling program, and we've been able to have these teams go out and particularly in Lahaina, but now that many of the survivors have been dispersed throughout the island, they also try to service Wailuku and Kahului as well. But they've been quite active, and we just finished receiving proposals for an RFP, and we're trying to build more teams. Our goal is to have 10 crisis counseling teams out there so that they can readily support the survivors.
And thank you for that effort. It's also for schools.
Yes.
The schools and the children and the teachers, yes, and also, of course, the parents.
Yes, so two of those teams, our goal was to dedicate that to support the schools.
Well, good. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Further question, Representative Kobayashi.
Just a comment. It seems that this bill requires funding, but this whole program is worthwhile only if it's done well. If the assessment is done well by qualified people quickly, even though remotely, which adds to the difficulty. And secondly, in terms of alternate health service being available after the assessment. So my thinking is that you need to insist that if this actually goes through, that funding be adequate, more than adequate to do the job well.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next bill. We're going to, Senate Bill 2885, ST2, HD1 relating to homelessness. First up is Department of Human Services. Oh, sorry. Next, Aloha Care.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mike Nguyen with Aloha Care. We've submitted written testimony, and I'll mostly stand on that, but just wanting to ask, as a stakeholder in the ecosystem of care in this bill, we're just respectfully asking that Aloha Care or a Quest Integration Health Plan be included in the working group. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, please come forward.
Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of Kapalama Neighborhood Security Watch. So, the triage center. So, I will be quoting the National League of Cities, and this is a credible source because the county from Honolulu attended a boot camp last year from the National League of Cities where topics included transforming community health. And the county of Honolulu is implementing the triage center and housing plans for the chronically homeless. So it's good as the policy is being set at the state to look at what the other counties are doing. And go out to get information from them. So, triage centers provide a strong opportunity to bring first responders and community-based service providers together to effectively address behavioral health crises and to improve the quality of life. So, leaders across the country are prioritizing better police responses to people suffering behavioral health crises, which include mental health and drug addiction, abuse. So triage centers serve as key components to improved police responses, and centers provide a treatment-focused option where first responders, including police and emergency teams, can intake eligible individuals experiencing mental health, behavioral health, substance addiction issues, rather than doing like traditional law enforcement on them. So the law enforcement leaders agree that they need alternatives to traditional law enforcement mechanisms in behavioral health crises. And as part of the NLC's role in safety and justice challenges, the data on triage centers from national partners are focused on creating a medical care structure rather than a law enforcement structure, right? So instead of arresting someone, right, provide the behavioral health resources for the drug abuser. Instead of a ticket for a belligerent senior yelling things that doesn't make sense, right? That's why we have the medically and culturally appropriate silver alert for dementia training. So I think the pattern with addressing chronically homeless and public safety concerns is now shifting to providing medical compassionate care, equipping law enforcement police officers with medically and culturally sensitive and appropriate training, which we can see is very effective in the implementation of triage centers. And so there should be more policies to enhance medically and culturally appropriate policies. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, questions, members? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next bill. Senate Bill 3109 SD1 HD1 relating to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. First up is Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Thank you. DHHF? Okay, thank you. Ho'omana Pono LLC.
How's it? Aloha mai kako, te kalaya mana ole, co-manager Ho'omana Pono, a Native Hawaiian Advocacy Corporation operating on the Waianae Coast. I'm also a beneficiary of the trust, and I'm here to support this bill. And specifically, I wanted to outline paragraph 3 of Kali Watson's own testimony to emphasize that part, that SB 3109 SD1 HD1 will provide clarity that should any funds lapse, an amount will be reappropriated to the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025 in order to align with the apparent legislative intent that DHHL be provided 3 full years to encumber the funds appropriated under Act 279, Session Laws Hawaii 2022. So I would just like to just emphasize that part, because I know that your intent was to make sure that we be able to utilize that money. And it's very important for us because, as you can see, Kali did a tough job. And I'm one of the only ones that will support him on a controversial one, Waipoli, the acquisition of Waipoli. He's doing a shotgun approach, and I'm really appreciative of his approach because for 103 years, bro, we never get nowhere. And now we're finally getting there. Anyway, good to see you, D, Kyle, everybody. Good to see you guys. Aloha.
Aloha.
You notice I haven't been here for a long time.
Yeah.
I just now focusing on Hawaiian Homeland, so that's where I've been. Aloha.
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 Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, thank you. Questions, members? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next bill. Senate Bill 2286 relating to internships. First up is Department of Education. Okay, thank you. Hawaii Kids Can.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee,
Okay, thank you. Chamber of Commerce. Okay, thank you. Kapolei Chamber of Commerce. Present. Okay, next is Hawaii Food Industry Association. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify, please come forward. I miss you. Go ahead.
Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Mayor Carpilliton Freitas with the Workforce Development Division.
So we support this measure, provided it doesn't impact the executive supplemental budget for FY 2025. Also, we'd like to offer suggestions on the language to Chapter 394 to delineate between private sector internship and private sector internship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to testify on this measure? Okay, members, questions? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2615, SD1, HD2, relating to county labor standards. First up is Department of Labor. Okay, thank you. Next is Pacific Resource Partnership.
Aloha Chair, Chris Delaney, Pacific Resource Partnership. Sorry I didn't hear you call me, but for the delay there. But we're in strong support of this bill, which allows and not requires each county to have the power to adopt labor standards. And then we do recommend an amendment to narrow the scope of this legislation to apply to the construction industry by replacing the term employers with contractors as defined by Section 444-1 of the HRS. So that's the only amendment that we're requesting at this time. But this is well needed. You know, a lot of the other counties are in support of it, and it really gives the opportunity for the counties to work collaboratively with other departments and to solve some of these big problems that deal with the underground economy, misclassification, violation of labor standards, so forth. If the counties have the power, then they can meaningfully participate in the compliance of these bad actors that come usually from the mainland to Hawaii, and they able to underbid because they're not paying appropriate wages and so forth, and they have a lower bid. They take the work from reputable contractors that follow the law here in the state, and they just leave, right? So they leave with everything. Hawaii gets nothing. They lose jobs, they lose tax revenue, they lose many things, right? Workers' comp, et cetera. So anyway, I think this would help, again, for the counties to be a more meaningful participant in tackling this underground economy. And I respectfully ask for your favorable decision on this bill.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify? Come forward.
Hi, aloha Chair, members of the committee. Pane Mentonga, Deputy Political Director for Operating Engineers Local 3. I believe you have written testimony from our District Representative, Anantu Yasasopo. I just wanted to come and testify in person that we support the bill and the amendments to change the language from employer to contractor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Questions, members?
Sure.
Yes.
For you, sir, or the unions? Yeah. Well, I think the term contractor, that's why. I was speaking to some other union reps this morning, and I think there's, of course, lack of workforce. And so sometimes companies have to go ahead and farm out, and that may go to mainland companies because there's just not enough work, and then they hire, maybe ship in guys and all that. So I think some kind of thing to address that. Is that what that Chapter 441 HRS you mentioned is at all, or can you clarify what that is?
Oh, you go first?
Yes. So I just want to address what you just mentioned. So we've heard a lot of a narrative about not having enough construction workers. And I want to push back on that just a little bit, because from an operating engineer standpoint, so my guys, they drive all the big equipment, right? The bulldozers, all the stuff everyone wants to play with, the Tonka trucks, the cranes, all of that stuff, right? We don't have a shortage. That's why I really push back on that narrative, because we don't have a shortage. Every year, we switch, for our apprenticeship program, we switch between the neighbor islands and Oahu. Every year, we get about 300 to 600 guys that apply. There's no shortage of workers. Our guys are pushing out apprentices every year to meet the demand. I will tell you, when they asked, when Maui happened, everybody's like, oh, we're not going to have enough construction workers. Construction's booming. We had plenty of guys that wanted to come over to Maui and work. We just said, you know what, we can't bring you guys over. There's not enough housing. But we have the workforce. At least from our perspective, for operating engineers, there's no issue with that. Now, I'll let Chris talk about the legal side. of what the employers and contractors, so take it away, Chris.
Yeah,
Thanks.
well, the contract, it's just limiting the scope to the construction industry, so it's not so broad. And you have to be a licensed contractor to do work in Hawaii anyway, right? That's the law. So there's no way around that. And this is just going to prevent a lot of, in my testimony, I've kind of went through a couple cases, there's many, where they do aiding and abetting, they do multiple types of violations in order to cut the cost, but it's illegal, right? These are labor violations, et cetera, so they're in and out really quick. And what happens is they have this business model, like S&A Construction as an example, across the nation, right? So they do this, they make their money here, they go to the next one with the same type of business model, I guess you could say, and they're in and out, right? And sometimes it takes some time for like departments to issue citations and so forth. But if they do have stuff on the books, like S&A has a number of violations already, so if they were to come back here to do work, and you give the counties the authority to revoke, suspend, or not even accept an application for a permit because of past violations, then you're preventing them from continuing these bad practices in the future. And so that's one reason why it's important. So it's to keep these bad actors out, because they're really ripping off the state. They're ripping off the workers, the local workers here, and so forth. So again, regardless of where you're originated from, you still have to be licensed under Chapter 444 to do construction in Hawaii. Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Just trying to be protective of Lahaina and the rebuilding also, right?
absolutely,
And who's
yeah.
going to come in and swoop in to take the jobs. So I'm happy that we have enough operators, and so I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for the questions, members. Okay, we're gonna recess for decision-making. Recess. Okay, we're going to reconvene the Committee on Finance for decision-making on our 215 agenda, agenda number 2. Okay, first up is Senate Bill 3091 SD2 HD1, making appropriations to the Department of Education for food service. Recommendation, members, is to pass as is. Any discussion? Vice Chair.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3091 SD2 HD1 as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ayu.
Aye.
Representative Chun. Representative Cochran.
Aye.
Representative Garrett.
Aye.
Representative Kahaloa. Representative Keela.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Lamasao. Representative Morikawa. Representative Nishimoto. Representative Poi Poi. Representative Takenouchi. Representative Alcos is excused and Representative Ward is excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 3092 SD2 HD1, making an emergency appropriation to the Department of Education for charter schools. This is, we do it for DOE, we have to do it for charter schools. So same recommendation as is. Discussion, Vice Chair.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3092 SD2 HD1 as is, noting the excused absences of Representative Alcos and Ward, who will be noted excused for the rest of this agenda. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 2727 SD2 HD1 relating to condominiums. We are going to be putting in, we're going to amend this to an HD2, and we're going to be putting in the amendments from the Green Infrastructure Alliance. Yeah, and then with the changes to adjust for this current measure. So HD2, any discussion, members? And then we have prior concurrence from CPC. Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2727 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any reservations?
Reservations.
Okay, reservations for Representative Cochran. Any additional reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 1035 SD2 HD1 relating to excise tax. Yeah, we're going to be passing this as is. Any discussion? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 1035 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 3289 SD1. We're going to be passing this out. We're just going to be redefecting the effective date to July 1, 3000. Discussion. Vice Chair.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3289 SD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Reservations for Representative Poi Poi. Any additional reservations for Representative Kobayashi? Reservations for Representative Ayu. Any additional reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 2725 relating to pass-through entity taxation. Members, we're going to be amending this bill to the House version, which is House Bill 1803 HD1, and also putting redefecting the effective date to July 1st, 3000. Any discussion? Okay, HD1.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2725 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2505 SD2 HD1 as is. Discussion. Vice Chair.
Chair, sorry.
Representative Keela.
I just want to note that there was, I am concerned that this could have an impact to ratepayers. I'm going to still vote yes, but I'm really interested to see how the bill will develop.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion. Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2505 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Okay, we're going to be moving on to Senate Bill 1511 SD2 HD1. We're going to be redefecting the effective date to July 1st, 3000. Any discussion? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 1511 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 2726 SD2 HD1 as is. Discussion. Vice Chair.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2726 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 3139 SD2 HD2. We're going to be blanking out the FDE. Discussion. Vice Chair.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3139, SD2, HD2 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 2885, SD2, HD1. We're going to be redefecting the effective date to July 1st, 3000. Any discussion? Vice Chair.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2885, SD2, HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 3109, SD1, HD1, relating to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Okay, members, we're going to be inserting the language from House Bill 2420 HD2 and putting a defective date of July 1st, 3000. That's our version of the same bill. Discussion. Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3109, SD1, HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 2286, SD2, HD2, as is. Discussion. Vice Chair.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2286, SD2, HD2 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 2615, SD1, HD2. Okay, members, we're going to be putting in the PRP amendments to contractors on the 444-1. Any discussion? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2615, SD1, HD2 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we're going to move on to the next agenda. This is a DM agenda only. This is bills previously heard on Tuesday, April 2nd. First up is Senate Bill 582, SD2. At this time, we're going to be blanking. Okay, we're going to be doing these numbers. Okay, these in the bill for non-congregate, for non-congregate eligible, we're going to be putting in $28 million. For ineligible, we're going to be $219,900,000. And then for the One Ohana Trust Fund, we're going to $65 million. And then also for the temporary housing on Maui infrastructure, $72.5 million. We're going to be lapsing the lapsing the pension for the general obligation bond authorization repeal. We're going to be repealing that. And then also Act 115 /22, Section 4, we're going to be amending Act 35/23, Section 5. The $300 million going to ERS, we're going to also be repealing that. So that one is A fund and one is C fund. And that's the money part. And then we're going to be also putting some additional reporting requirements so that the as the governor moves, the administration moves on this, they inform the legislature of what's going on. So we're putting some reporting language in there, and then also some cleanup and tech language, and then also defecting it to July 1st, 3000. Discussion. Okay, Vice Chair for the vote. And this is the emergency appropriation. Yeah. Okay, Vice Chair to vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 582, SD2 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ayu.
Aye.
Representative Chun. Representative Cochran.
Aye.
Representative Garrett.
Aye.
Representative Kahaloa. Representative Kila. Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Lamasao. Representative Morikawa. Representative Nishimoto. Representative Poi Poi. Representative Takenouchi. Representative Alcos is excused. Representative Ward is excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Now we're moving on to Senate Bill 3068 SD1 relating to appropriation for wildfire recovery. Okay, this one we're going to be adding for risk management, W Fund, $200 million. BNF set aside for disaster recovery costs, reporting requirements, $186,160,000 A fund, and then federal funds received for wildfire and emergency response equipment, $10 million in A funds. Maui for Maui, the final disposition on sites, we're going to be putting, let's see, this is all going to be all GO reimbursable, $4.56 million for that. Wastewater collection and repairs, $11 million. Wastewater collection systems, lateral and cleanouts, that one's going to be $9 million. Maui traffic signal replacement, $3 million. Maui fire improvements for water systems, that one's $10 million. Maui supply, supply infrastructure and repair replacement, $10 million. Storm drain, flood control, water quality improvements, $8 million. Roadway connectivity and disaster for evacuation, $8 million. These are all geo reimbursable, the ones I just mentioned. And these appropriations is for all for FY25. Okay, also we will be putting additional reporting requirements, some cleanup language, and technical amendments, as well as the effective date of July 1st, 3000. Discussion.
Question.
Representative Kobayashi.
Can we do something to allow flexibilities so that monies can be transferred from one pocket to the other pocket? Because some of those items could easily go above current estimate.
These are the best numbers we have at this time. This it's a defective, so when we take it to conference, we'll be cleaning it up a little bit more.
Yeah, but
this
when
is-
they actually go
yeah.
out to bid,
Yeah, I understand.
you know,
I understand.
hard to guess the future
Yeah,
with bidding.
yeah, I
So,
understand.
you know, if we can give Maui flexibility, that might help.
Okay, it's something we'll consider. Thank you. Okay, further discussion.
Chair.
Yes.
Appreciate all the monies here, in particular from Maui, Lahaina. So is there a way to track all this, though?
That's
as
what
it
the
moves to-
reporting requirements are all for. We're putting in
Oh.
there that they have to kind of let us know what's going on. There is reporting requirements that when they do things, they got to let us know before, and then when they spend the money, they got to tell us know after. And then as things are moving along, there's requirements to keep us informed of what's going on.
Yeah, okay, because it's been hard just for me to track a few million through the harbors and things of that nature.
Yes.
Also, the procurement process, I mean, RFP should be publicly posted online and all that, but I'm having a really tough time right now with county contracts, trying to track them and figuring out how they got to be where they are. So I hope it's an open, transparent process. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3068, SD1 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Alcos and Ward, who will be noted excused for the rest of this agenda. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 3234 SD1, HD1, relating to the stabilization of property insurance. Okay, this one has several amendments. Okay, first, we're going to be amending the section of the bill that amends the plan of operation requiring requirements of the Hawaii Property Insurance Association and the Hawaii Hurricane Relief Fund to include specific criteria of condominium associations that must meet to qualify for the insurance under each entity. Adding amendments to codify and clearly state that the Hawaii Property Tax Association and the Hurricane Relief Fund shall only be used for insurers of last resort and require proof that the applicant has not been able to obtain property insurance or insurance from a license to conduct business in the state of Hawaii. And we'll be also adding a temporary property tax insurance stabilization fee into HRS 431P-B that will be deposited into an unspecified percentage of proceeds into a separate account within the Hurricane Reserve Trust Fund and an unspecified percentage with the Hawaii Property Insurance Association. And the fee will be imposed on all transactions and conveyance of real estate, and adding a blank sunset date for the fee. We will also be adding both general fund appropriations and general obligation bond authorization to keep the amounts blank at this time, and appropriate the bond revenue will be used for capitalization of the Hurricane Relief Fund. Amending the preamble to reflect the amendments made on the bill, including language regarding the fund to be the insurer of last resort, and the needs for temporary property tax insurance stabilization fee for the property tax transactions. And finally, we'll be making numerous technical and non-substantive amendments to ensure consistency and clarity in this version. Any comments? Yes.
Will this conveyance tax be imposed on everyone or just condos?
That needs to be clarified. Right now, I think it's just the ones that are in need, right, of this
okay.
insurance, right?
Targeted.
I think they're gonna assess everybody because this is conveyance tax and all these other things as we go through. It's similar to the Hurricane Relief Fund, where it's gonna try and build up a corpus, right?
Mhm.
Further comments? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3234 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 2922 SD2 HD2 relating to the public utilities. Okay, members, we're going to be making one amendment. We're going to be removing section 5 and 6. This is the SPURB language, and that's it. HD3, discussion. Okay?
Sure.
Yes.
I think I mentioned yesterday about 1,100 opposition testimonies that were brought, that I was alerted about, and they're all the victims of Lahaina from this situation, whose 1,100 testimonies were never seen, never, I don't know, processed, something. But I've been told they were physically brought to the office here.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why it's not in our system, though.
Yeah, so the way the process works, and it's always worked this way, is you have to insert it online to get testimony inserted into the process. So that's the process that we've been following for the past several years.
Right, so then they were told to send it via email, PDF, attachment type form, did that too, by, direction of your office. And so still, after they complied with all of that, it still has not appeared. So, I mean, I just feel like, the people of Lahaina, those 1,100 survivors, voices really need to be accounted for and taken into consideration in this decision and heard. I mean, it's hard to just hop on a plane and come over here. A lot of them are kupuna, no more computer, no more phone. They don't know how to interact with us, So written format was what worked. And so, I just want to put that out there, that I really feel like they got slighted, and and it hurts.
Okay, thank you. All right. Further discussion? Yeah.
I'm voting yes because I think when we did the working groups over the interim, this was bound to happen. I think that was the direction as we started to learn as the tragedy has unfolded. And now what has happened in one part of the state will be the burden of ratepayers across the state to help find a way forward for the company and parts of Maui that were affected. I think it's imperative that the PUC make sure is intentional on whatever way a fee is assessed. It does little to no impact on folks, but it allows the utility company to really fortify their grid and help fire-prone areas like my district. For far too long, I think they've had to operate without support, and they are a local company, and I do struggle to some extent to see ratepayers will be affected across the state, but if this is what it takes to move forward, I think this is in good faith. So thank you.
Understood. Further discussion? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Sorry, Chair, real quick. And so, hearing the pleas of my district and feeling like they, been harmed to no fault of their own and what have you. I mean, I have to support their voice, But I've discussed it with the people that are sitting in the front row, the difficulty in the decision here, knowing that we need to harden the grid statewide, yes. And so if there's assurances, I mean, I'm hearing there's assurances in the new form that, litigation, all that's taken out of the picture. So ratepayers across the state are not gonna fund whatever comes out of that type of, billing of sorts. And so that allays my fear, and, I want the people compensated, obviously, and, but not through this on the backs of all taxpayers, ratepayers, and especially not the ones of Lahaina. At this time, I can't support it. I think the people I've spoke to thoroughly with this particular item understand that it's a tough situation I am in, and I know we all are, but I appreciate the efforts for sure. And so I'm here to support, and at the end of the day, we just want the same thing, goal in mind, which is to beef up our infrastructure and to learn from what occurred and not have it happen again to any of us. So that's my comments, Chair, at this time, so just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Representative Popoy.
I'm going to be voting with reservations on this. I really appreciate all the amendments and you folks listening and taking all the feedback and trying to incorporate it. As I've mentioned, the cost to ratepayers has been my concern as this goes through, and also just as they're all combined, because we have this bill, the next one, the previous one earlier related to Public Utilities Commission and the resilience, monitoring resilience and how that all adds up. So that's still my concern, and I'll be with reservations.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2922 SD2 HD2 with amendments, noting the reservations of Representative Poy. Are there additional reservations? Noting the no vote of Representative Cochran, are there additional no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to Senate Bill 3344 SD2 HD1 relating to wildfires. Okay, we're just going to be blanking out the FTE. Any discussion? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3344 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Reservations for Representative Poy. Any other reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. Is this our last? Yeah, this is our last, okay. Okay, we're not going to waive anything on the floor. Okay.